Todd, I want to get to the illegal welfare immigration fraud scheme. When you look at this thing in Somalia, it's $1 billion. $1 billion. How do you come from another country and steal $1 billion of taxpayers' money right under your nose and nobody knows about it? How's that happen?
Well, I mean, I think nobody knows about it because nobody's paying attention and nobody cares, right? I mean, if the agenda is, which it seems to me, somebody maybe can prove me wrong on this, but if the agenda is to bring in as many people as possible who will vote for you and your party, regardless of what the circumstances are, then you really don't care about how they got here, why they got here, or what it took to give them to get here. And, I've heard a lot of people talk about, this is what happened in California, which used to be a divided red-blue state until they basically opened the borders up to illegal immigration, induced in part with, all these lavish social benefits that you could get for free just for coming across the border. And then, of course, you vote for the party that gave you those things, and you end up with a blue state, a one-party state. And so, my guess is that's what's happening in other areas of the country as well. It's what happened in general under the the Biden administration. And so why would you care? You're getting, your objective is being met. You're bringing in all these people, and it doesn't take that many, as we've seen, to swing an election in the right parts of the country. So that would be my guess as to what's going on there.
The situation, the level of fraud. You look at the Obamacare subsidies. You look at Medicare. It's just, the fraud is incredible numbers. What is that doing to the economy, Todd?
Well, it's pushed us to where we've got, government expenditures are 24 to 25% of GDP. We've had consistent tax revenues at 17 to 17.5% of GDP for the last 60 years under both Republican and Democratic administrations, which tells us there's a political limit to how high the revenues are going to go. But what's happened is, the Democrats, predominantly, the Republicans have played along at times as well, have pushed these expenses up so high, we are at risk of being pushed down a European socialist model. And if you see what's happening in places like England and France, that can work only so long as other people are willing to fund the debt that it takes to drive that model. And if they stop, you're going to be forced, into austerity measures under adverse circumstances, which, hopefully we can avoid that. We still have the opportunity to grow our way out of this, hopefully, although the clock is ticking on that. But, that's the danger of all these things.
Can we turn the corner here and turn the economy around to have a chance to win the midterms?
Yeah, I think there's still time for that to happen. I mean, it needs to start happening pretty soon, and probably early next year, so that there's enough momentum going, by the time we get to the fall. But there's still plenty of time for that to happen.
What does President Trump have to do in the first quarter in order to turn the tide?
Yeah, I think you've got to hold the line on inflation. Like we've talked about, we need non-inflationary real growth. So we've got to hold the line on inflation. The one thing that's left out there, I think, is to create some more certainty about the tariffs, which I think will help. I think even without a lot happening there, I think businesses adjusting to the tariff landscape, realizing it's not going to be that big of a deal. That level of uncertainty, I think, was very powerful 6 months ago. I think it's diminishing now, but everything we can do to set the rules of the road and make it clear so businesses know what their costs are going to be as they start budgeting and making decisions about investment and growing their business. I think that's the remaining thing that's left to be done there in the short term. Longer term, then we've got to go after these deficits. And somebody's going to have to decide to take a stand on the spending issues, which doesn't mean, ideally you would cut this stuff back and we would go to like a pre-COVID expenditure level. That might be too much to hope for. But it does mean, at the least, that we make a concerted effort to grow expenses at significantly lower rates than revenues are growing. And we've been doing the opposite for the last 20 years.
Who do you think is going to be the new Fed chair?
Yeah, I think Hassard is a guy that everybody seems to be talking about right now. So we'll see. But and it sounds like Trump's made his decision. He just hasn't announced it yet. But
I think it's Hassard because he's now doing media like all over the place. He was supposed to be on my show the other day. He got caught up in some bad travel. But when somebody starts doing media like that, you kind of get the feeling he's the front runner. Are you looking for a rate decrease, another quarter point? What do you look for the next time they meet the next month?
Yeah, it's very hard to tell right now. There's mixed signals. I think that the most recent signals kind of indicate that that's where they're leaning. You've had a couple of people close to Powell who've been talking about being open to that kind of a move. Personally, I'm concerned about that. I mean, I don't believe in the models. None of the forecasting models mean anything. I believe that you've got to keep it very simple. The Fed doesn't know how to forecast the economy. It doesn't know how to forecast inflation. Nobody else does either. So what you look at is the real federal funds rate, which is the spread between the federal funds rate and inflation. Right now, that is down around 1%. That is a low level. That's a easy money kind of level. If we go back to before the last couple of decades when the Fed went crazy with all these policies that have hurt us so much, we would have been looking at real Fed funds rates of 2 to 2.5%. So I think rates are already low. And then the other thing you look at is what is happening with the trend of consumer price inflation. And it's not running out of control, but a year ago it was in the 2.7% range, and now it's a little bit higher. So those two things, these aren't models, these aren't trying to forecast a year out, a quarter out, which nobody can do. This is reality. Those two things are both telling us to be careful with monetary policy. And like we talked about, I think last time, if we were in a healthy economy and we hadn't had the Biden inflation and the Biden affordability problems, then it'd be like, the skin on our arms would be healthy. And if we dropped a little salt on it, a couple droplets, it wouldn't hurt that much. But we've got gaping wounds there that aren't going to go away because of these past mistakes. And so any little doses of inflation cause much more pain than they normally would. So I think those are the things for us to watch.
And Todd, one of the concerns I have about the $2,000 rebate, where I understand what President Trump is trying to do is help people because they need the money. I'm less concerned about what that doesn't pay the deficit down, and more concerned with your flooding more cash into the economy, which is chasing too few goods and services because you're not getting equivalent growth in GDP. And so that's going to drive prices up again, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think you've got both issues. You do have a deficit issue. It may not be that big of an impact, but there is a point where I think you've got to send the message to people, and small things can make a difference under those circumstances. And you've got to say, hey, we have a deficit problem. It is, 6-7% of GDP. When you have deficits, you end up pushing debt to dangerous levels, which we've already done, or inflating your way out of it, which is a huge risk. And you've got to say, we're going to take a strong stand on these issues, and we are going to start committing ourselves towards deficit reduction. So I think that's important. And I think the point you've just made, look, that's the mistake Biden made, not at the same magnitude, but when they came in, the economy had already recovered from the COVID downturn. Trump had already put a lot of money into the system to try and help carry us through. That was an emergency. That wasn't a reasonable thing to do. But then when they came in with the so-called Inflation Reduction Act and all of the spending to try and boost things, that's what created these affordability problems in the first place. So we've got to get away from those habits and that kind of thing.
Well, Todd, I don't think there's any doubt. If you were advising Scott Bessent, what would be your number one thing you would tell him today?
I have a lot of confidence in Scott, but I would say go back to what you were talking about when you first came in, which is to push these deficits down to 3% of GDP and get growth going at the same time.
Todd Sheets, good to have you with us. 3% of GDP. That's what we need to do, get that pushed down. Thank you. The great thing about Todd, he's like me. All his stuff is free. So just go to Substack, Todd Sheets, 2Ds, 2Es, 2Ds, 2Es. See, I like that, Todd Sheets. Go to Substack. Everything is free. Follow him there. Stacey Garrity running for governor, Pennsylvania, next.